It is now time to introduce our opening plenary session. Today's program will stretch us to talk about things that are not always easy to discuss, including talking with patients and families when they are at their most vulnerable. These are serious and important conversations. What if we could engage in those conversations with more confidence, a touch of humor, and greater ease? Perhaps we could also do the same with other people in our lives. Our speaker today has been stirring up difficult conversations for more than a decade, performing as a stand-up comic, speaking on stage as a diversity educator, and moving teams from abstract to action. Jessica Pettit is a member of the National Speakers Association and a certified speaking professional. She made a big impression last year at our Diversity and Inclusion Forum, and we are excited to have her back with us here in Boston on the big stage. When she's not traveling the country, she is spoiling her pug lab mix Leo and listening to Johnny Cash cover bands. Remember to tweet your questions using the hashtag HPMQ, and our Twitter correspondents will be gathering your questions for Jessica to address after her presentation. Please join me in welcoming Jessica Pettit to the stage today to help us become the change we want to be.
Thank you. Okay, so I had like all this planned out, and then that was the most moving, inspirational, funny, good-looking award show I've ever experienced. It started off with Irish dancers with epic hairpieces, and I'm wearing a full-length dress and I had to climb upstairs. I feel like my work here is done. I'm honored to be back. I'm honored to have worked with this organization for the entire year. I'm excited to keep it up. And there's really one reason, and that in all of the audiences that I work with, you get it in a way that no one else really seems to consistently get it. What I mean by that is that you come to educational conferences like this, sure, to like learn stuff, but that's super secondary. First one is to connect and to find old friends and make new ones and visit your family and get filled back up because you're depleted with all of the energy and presence you give everyone else. You come here to get full, and you're still giving to other people. That is, as a diversity and inclusion expert, whatever that means, I'm considering I'm not that diverse and I forget to include things all the time. What I think is really incredible is that when I try to explain the difference between cultural competency and cultural humility, you are already doing it. You just might not know it. You're not looking for the perfect answer because you already know there isn't a perfect answer. And you lean into the imperfect, unanswerable questions because that's the space you fill. How exhausted or highly caffeinated you must be. It's a phenomenal combination. In the time that we have together this week, what I would like to do is encourage you to keep it up. It doesn't actually get easier. Spoiler alert. It does, however, keep getting. And that's really what I want to talk to you about today. When I was doing this work over the years, I began to notice that nothing was changing. The questions I was getting were always the same. The answers I was giving were always the same. The work I was doing was kind of the same. It created a lot of t-shirts and bumper stickers and campaigns, but really the conversation wasn't shifting. And what I realized is that the diversity and inclusion work that I was doing was all external to me. How doing work from my places of privilege wasn't shifting my own awareness of my places of privilege. I was attracting things. I was collecting things. I was learning new vocabulary words. And as a well-intentioned white woman, as I got thicker binders of vocabularies and a longer Rolodex list of phone numbers, I felt separate, if not better, than other people who had shorter lists and were unfamiliar to new words. I was using my diversity and inclusion expertise to make other people feel stupid and small, which is yet another way of excluding people. Interestingly, I did not find this refueling in any way. I was being drained. What I realized was it wasn't so much a liquid process as much as it was a crispy, burnt crouton process. And I wasn't even a crouton from like the middle of yesterday's bread. It was like a crouton from an old heel. So, as I realized nothing was changing out here and nothing was really changing in here, I had to figure out something different. So I started paying attention. And in paying attention, what I realized is that there is a difference between being competent and being humble. And specifically, when I get to work with audiences like this, I don't want you to feel like you have to dump one for the other. You need both. You need to be able to bring your expertise into a conversation, into a room, into a parking lot, into that moment at the stack of cantaloupes where that person grabbed the one you had your eye on. You felt entitled to that cantaloupe. You get home, you cut up the one you got, you know that that one was better. This cannot just be me, right? You bring that expertise in, and then this is what you do. You say, okay, now you engage in a real conversation. You are an expert. Some of you are like, I don't know about that guy. Put your fingers down. Pointing is rude. Okay? You do need your expertise. It is valid. It is real. As are your beliefs, as are your personal politics, as are the experiences you bring with you like heavy luggage from your own lived experience. All of this is required to enter a real conversation. We use the word authentic like wallpaper, but we don't necessarily know when we're really having an authentic conversation. What's important to be able to do when you're having a conversation, when it gets interrupted, if you're pissed off that it got interrupted, that's an authentic conversation. If you're like, yay, next, that is not an authentic conversation. And you will ebb and flow between those based on your filled upness. Bringing your competence in, bringing your expertise in, isn't just what you learned in school. It's your whole lived experience. And then you set it aside and you listen and you have a conversation. What's fascinating is that in most of my work, that's the hard part. Y'all do that every day. You just don't necessarily know that that's a skill that you can apply in all the different areas of your life. As soon as we switch, like a Rubik's Cube, as soon as you switch one particular variable, topic, or the person you're talking to, you get so frustrated, often we move into expert or exit mode. That's it. So what I thought I would share with you today is how to notice that and realize you're just as frustrating as they are. Let's be inclusive, right? So I'm going to invite you to picture frustrating people. Some of you are like, it is too early, I left town for this. Let's be honest, some of you are sitting next to them and you're like, oh, this is going to get really awkward. The reality is they've pictured you, so they're just as uncomfortable right now. I want you to think about who frustrates you and why. And we're going to work there. Because if you can apply new information to the most frustrating people, everyone else is a little easier. That's the plan, right? Get your money's worth. So as I started noticing I was turning into a crouton, what I realized is that I was coming up with a series of excuses, and I was listening to people and their series of excuses. And it mostly came down to, I just don't know what to do every single time, every way, all the time. Okay, good. Guess what? None of us do. None of us know exactly what to do every single time, all of the time, every time. So stop asking for that, because you don't know. It's much easier to say than to do. But I started paying attention, and what I realized is that depending on the variables, some of us lean into this like fake expertise. Like, we got this. We're super confident. We're super egotistical that we've got, like, we handled. You don't know anything about this. I think about this, and my husband's best friend, love her. I call her Package. She came with the package. But you have one of these too. Okay, good. Package one day sat down at a piano and just started playing the piano. She does not know how to play the piano, but she's like, I'll figure it out. Do you know these people? Right? Some of them end up being kind of idiot savants and like all this magic is happening. I'll let you go conclude where this story turned out with my package friend. But there's a lot of times where we engage in stuff and we're winging it. We know this. And some of us, it works out okay. The first time I did a stand-up paddleboard class, I was like, this is amazing. This is great. I read one blog post about larger human beings standing up because it's like the inverse of physics. So I don't like floating. I don't like getting wet. I don't like doing any of this stuff, but it's outdoors and I live in this beautiful area and everybody's always talking about birds. So I was like, okay. That's why people made cameras, but okay. Anyways, so I go in to get onto this stand-up paddleboard. I have no idea how to do any kind of outdoor activity because everything I want to do involves a couch. And I figured it out, right? Like, I figured out that it's not connected to the ground and like it moves backwards when you think it's moving forwards because it's not on wheels, whatever, nature. I figured it out. I did it once, done. If I go back to stand-up paddleboard again, which clearly means I've been dared or someone's life is in danger, if I were to do that, I would have to learn how to do it again. I don't remember. In that context, it's totally fine. There's also the stuff we fake. Then there's the stuff we just avoid. We can try. We can fake it. And then we're like, slowly backing away. If you need a context, maybe some of you are not aware of what you slowly back away from. Think about the last time you unfollowed someone on Facebook or something because you don't want to unfriend them because it's too confrontational for them someday to find out that they have been unfriended, because then you get that awkward message of like, you know, it's so weird. I went to your page and I was unfriended. Or worse, they've unsubscribed from your newsletter or something like that, right? You find this out, that's too much conflict. So now we've built in how to unfollow so that we don't actually have to engage in that conversation. You'd be fine with it with this person. You're fine, okay, sometimes with this person. But then there's those ones you avoid. This is literally how we show up in the world. I thought it was just me, but it's actually a pattern. Weird. So I decided when I was all burnt out and croutony, I noticed this distinctive thing, and I was like, all right, I either need to quit and go get another job, or I have to do something with this, because perhaps this is a different approach. This is a different approach to diversity and inclusion that might actually be more diverse and more inclusive if I go that route. So of course that scared me, so I tried to get another job. And I realized this is really the main skill set I have going for me is talking. Ask my husband, he'll tell you. The only other thing I really know how to do is fold a fitted sheet. Some of you, that's a big deal. Some of you are like, that's what she means? Like, no, there's a process. So then I thought, okay, well, maybe I'll find a job folding fitted sheets, except they come folded, like in Magic Land. So I was like, well, where does the folding happen? And now machines do it, so that's out, right? So short of eating copious amounts of Girl Scout cookies, I don't really know what else I am capable of doing. I tried really hard to figure some stuff out, and mostly, no, they were all fails. So I'm stuck with this. Here we are. So I started paying attention. I noticed these patterns. I'll be honest, I reorganized my linen closet so I could feel competent. And then I decided to write. I started writing. When I came up with the concept of good enough now, I decided to kind of like test pilot it with other folks. So I was born and raised in the United States with this kind of over-the-top, exceptional motivation. Are you familiar with this? It can't possibly just be me. But like when I say American exceptionalism, I feel like eagles should be sprouting out behind me because we are exceptional. This concept of being exceptional shows up everywhere. It shows up, a friend of mine just got their 360 evaluation at work. The other side of this 360 evaluation is a financial bonus. For 20-something years, they have gotten exceptional every year, every year, every year. So now he banks on this financial bonus. This year, he got superior, which was evidently lower than exceptional. Because superior is horrible, right? He's all knickers in a twist about this because he doesn't know what he did to fall from exceptional to superior. I tried to explain, like, maybe it's alphabetical, maybe it's a promotion, but he didn't get the same financial bonus, so he sees it as a demotion. I don't know, maybe it was someone else's turn to be exceptional. Maybe the supervisor's trying to motivate someone. Maybe they checked the wrong box. Right? Y'all have filled out paperwork before, right? It is fascinating to me how good is terrible. Good is by definition good. So I started floating the idea of what if we just focused on being good enough? Not like good enough for government work. That came up a lot. And let's be honest, good enough for government work is pretty good, right? What's interesting about the phrase good enough for government work is you're expecting it to be slightly delayed or possibly damaged upon arrival, right? When you apply for a passport, you get your old passport back, hopefully, and usually in a timely manner. If you read the language on the website I just updated my passport, it is so super prepared for this to not work out. And then you're like, okay, we'll see, right? And then like, oh, magic, my old passport came back. It's only been 2 years, but it's good enough, right? It came back. What do you want? I invite us to look at the concepts of good and enough separately because I find it more realistic, if not more motivating. Then the scary part is now. We'll get there. Relax, it's early. When I discovered that good enough now triggered the same reaction in almost everybody that I tested it out with, I knew I was onto something. Because it was like the same music happened every time I said, what do you think about good enough now? People would be like, oh, well, I don't know. But they couldn't make their excuses anymore. You know, they made weird, sick duck noises, but they didn't say no. They didn't reject it. And they always leaned in a little bit. Well, what do you mean by good enough now? So I realized over the last 15 years of doing this kind of work, what do I mean by good enough now? is really doing the best you can with what you got some of the time. That's it. Yeah, you're welcome. There is your thesis. Doing the best you can, what you got, some of the time. I'm going to go backwards, and then I'm going to explain them a little bit more in depth. Some of the time. You know the people who are on some kind of horse, metaphorically, all of the time. Do you know these people? If you can't picture them in your life, sometimes they're called social justice warriors. I usually call them cape wearers. Like, did we learn nothing from The Incredibles? No capes. All of the time, people, if you cannot picture the person in your life who goes through the linguistic history of every word and you use and why you can't use that word anymore because I have cable and I know some new word. If you can't picture that person in your life, it's you. Okay? Knock it off. Now, I do think it's important to say that from a very visibly privileged place, I mean, like, I'm thin, I'm hot, I'm smart, I'm white, and I'm self-employed. My boss loves me. It is very important to understand that when I say some of the time, for some folks, waking up is already a revolution. And I don't mean it in like a sleepy way. I mean navigating systems of oppression to get to work, let alone the ones that exist at work. Those you can't clock out of. But all of us have dominant identities. All of us can do good some of the time. And those of us that think 100% of the time you are 100% right, I am willing to bet you do not have the relationships or the community to actually do good. Because you've isolated yourself. I know this because I did this for years. If you are unfamiliar, if you need like a litmus test, I started backwards on purpose. I'll give you some time to think about it. Just ask yourself, do not answer it out loud. When is the last time you got invited to go to a movie with someone else? If it has been a long time, you're the problem. The reason why I mean that is the last time I got invited to go to a movie with friends, before I realized this, I'm slightly recovered now, was Alien versus Predator. Some of you are going to have to Google that one. It was a long time ago, and for the record, I would not watch this movie. You're welcome. Do not queue it up on Netflix or something. Anyway, so after seeing Alien versus Predator, we go to Denny's, which I think is Latin for post-movie meal, right? And my friends, close friends, are like, so what did you think about Alien versus Predator? What did you think about the movie? And my immediate response was, well, the ethnically ambiguous character was not the first person to die. No one wants to go to a movie with that person. Does that make sense? So if you are completely no, she is wrong. First up, hit Twitter. I barely know how to log in. They had to get 3 people to help moderate whatever's happening on Twitter. But I want you to pay attention that if you're having those responses, pay attention to the rest of my speech, maybe buy a book, okay? Some of the time, very important. Take care of you and don't be that person. I'll come back to you because don't believe me. I'll be back, pinko commie liberals. I see you, I can smell you. All the time has gotten us where we're at now. And there's some good that still happen. When we talk about good and enough, I want us to recognize that this is a positive thing. This is not a self-limiting thing. This is really key. To be good means you're gonna try. I believe even them, Them. Are you Facebook friends with them too? Yeah, them. That one person on staff. You should come to my staff meetings. No, that is why I'm self-employed. When that person, if I am incapable of understanding that that person is good, I will not have a successful interaction with them. Their life has taught them to be this way. Now, your speakers are not plugged in, but I can hear you. You do not know this one person. They're always named Todd. If there's a Todd in the room, I'm sorry, but I'm going to talk about you for a second. But there are people who do not seem to shift how they show up. And then the meeting after the meeting and the meeting before the meeting is preparing on how to deal with Todd who doesn't shift. Here's a tip. Number one, you're Todd. Unless you are consciously trying to figure out how to adjust, you're Todd. Todd is also Todd. If you can pay attention to how you show up and recognize that your life has taught you to show up the way you are showing up, because your life has taught you that this is how to be safe and prepared. And then you give that space of grace to them, the them I'm calling Todd, or to Todd. Give them the space that their life has taught them this is the way to show up. And listen to it. One of the smartest things my shrink has ever taught me is that being mad at someone for behaving exactly the way you expected them to is stupid. I just saved you a copay. I will repeat it just in case, because she had to too. If you are mad at somebody, you're frustrated with somebody because they show up exactly the way you expected them to, you're the dumb one. Because they're doing what they expected you to do. So when you walk in and you have expectations and those are confirmed, you're both right. You get to choose whether or not that's going to be a good interaction or not. Make sense? Good does not mean right, and it doesn't mean perfect, and it doesn't mean like Pegasus that fly in and deliver free cupcakes to everyone. Good just means good. And I deeply believe over this past year, when I've been like embedded with y'all for a year, when you talk about your patients and you talk about their families and you talk about your coworkers and you talk about your volunteer roles and you talk about your board roles and you talk about people within this organization, there is an assumption of good that gets shared. Maybe you're too exhausted to do that to like random people you meet in real life, but you already have that skill. Chances are somebody done you wrong somewhere, because you're alive, right? Somebody done you wrong, and anybody who comes close to whoever done you wrong is now either conscious or unconscious bias in how you show up. I went to grad school in South Carolina. I am originally from Texas. I have not lived in either of those states outside of my family, like conceived me and birthed me there, and I fled upon high school graduation or when I got my master's degree. However, when I meet someone who happens to mention that they're from Texas or happens to mention they're from South Carolina, I immediately love them. They're great. Yeah, see? Mwah. That is positive bias, and I'm pretty conscious of it. Can you be conscious that you might be unconscious to what is preventing you from finding good? That's a big question, but you can handle it. Can you become conscious that you might be unconscious of what is preventing you from finding good? When I say do the best you can, that's what I mean. You do not have to be perfect. This is an imperfect universe, and I'm talking bigger than your job. Can you do the best you can by giving grace and space to be conscious that you might be unconscious? It might be negative, it might be positive, but you don't know. But the assumption is good. When we get to enough, this is the measurable part that people are usually like, I have a question. Enough is just with what you already have. Right now, I know that there's ed sessions and all kinds of stuff happening, and that's really going to supplement what you already have. But enough means you're already interacting. You may remember this or know this story or not, and it's not that unique of a story, but when my parents died when I was really young, and as soon as I say that, everyone comes to me to tell me about how their parents died when they were really young because it's a secret club. We're so excited we ran into another member. So what's fascinating to me is that I have a younger brother, and so I was raising him. And by that, I mean he's breathing. What else you want? I would say we were probably 7 years into this relationship of it's just the two of us. I had gone to conferences, I had read books, I had taken classes. I was unaware how to be the elder sister. I had gone to all of these things. I started going to Al-Anon because it's about family dynamics. I didn't meet any of the other requirements, but maybe that would help me figure out how to be a big sister. I tried and tried and tried and tried. And my brother, who has chosen many different things from me, has a very expensive therapy-based sentence. 7 years in, we are at some restaurant somewhere, and I was telling him that I had another retreat coming up about how to be an elder sibling. And my brother put his fork down and was like, we both wear glasses, that actually happened. You are my older sister. And I was like, yeah, I know, but I've really been struggling with this. This was kind of forced upon me, and I don't know how to do it, and I don't know exactly what to do and what boundaries to do, and I need really a flow chart, and possibly if you could map out every terrible choice you're about to make, because I know there's more coming, that would really help me with being planful. Could you? That would be great. I might put it in my bullet journal, right? So my brother stares at me. I have all this education. He has street education is how he refers to it. And he says, you could just return a phone call. If I were writing a job description, that's probably where I would start. What I realized is that I didn't feel like I was gonna nail it, this older sister thing that has happened every second of his life that I have been his older sister. And because I didn't feel like I was going to excel at it, I was not fulfilling the job, yet still holding the job, which meant I was doing a bad job while trying to study how to do a good job. Is this too meta for the morning? Enough is recognizing you're already doing it. You might not be doing whatever your it is awesome. You may be missing the eagles behind you, but you are already fulfilling the role, so you might as well just acknowledge it, right? With what you have right now. Now, I attempted to do the Twitter. I recommended on Twitter that you can go to my website, goodenoughnow.com/freebies, and get a bunch of self-assessment tools and handouts. You can also take a survey, which is goodenoughnow.com/survey, very clever. You can also download my free app, which is amazing that I have an app because I barely know how to refill a stapler. But there is an iPhone one and an Android one, inclusion. App is available. There's a survey that you can take. Is 13 questions. It actually does involve questions about taco trucks and other statistically valid things. But I'm a dork, so it is a statistically valid survey. But the piece of the enough that I want to just touch on, and we'll talk more in the breakout session later today at 1:30, or you could buy the book, limited time only. Okay, good. I created a model based on these survey results to help people understand where you're frustrating, where you get frustrated and why you frustrate other people. The variables are head, heart, and action. And chances are you show up with 2 of them on the regular, so you need to become aware of how you show up. Once you are aware of how you show up, you can actually take responsibility for what you got, because that's actually enough. Make sense? So if you occasionally do this good thing and you occasionally do this enough thing, now we're back to now. So those of you earlier that were like, oh, no, this is a 24/7 thing, I'm on it, you don't know my boss. Your boss knows you and is probably not going to be your boss for very long. And I say this because I've been fired 5 of 7 jobs. I was just doing this week-long leadership training, and one of the participants was like, wait, you got fired for doing your job? And I was like, welcome. Yes, because if I'm pointing out the problems all of the time, I am going to get fired. I think that's actually math. I think that's how math works, right? If you can strategically and critically help an organization recognize where its weaknesses might be, of course pointing out and really leaning hard on the strengths, then you become a consultant. That is also how math works. Good job. If you can do the best you can with what you got, some of the time, not only will you maintain more diverse and more complicated relationships, but you also can take care of yourself and fill up in a way that you need to. And so can they. Some of us are a lot. And like hanging out with a fire hose is wet. Do you know what I mean? Like sometimes just be. Just be. If you do that, it will fill you up and it will fill them up. And they'll come back to you. I am so proud of the fact that my Facebook feed is wildly diverse in its opinions. It is a place that I can manage a respectful platform for people to have conversations that are outside of their echo chamber. I love that I've been able to do this on social media. I challenge myself to do it in real life. Look at the books you're reading. If you have time to leisure read, maybe we'll start someplace else. Look at who you're talking with. When you're on airplanes, when do you immediately put the earbuds in versus talk to the person next to you? Are you taking care of yourself? Are you protecting yourself? Are you hiding yourself? So 3 very different things that you need to remain conscious of. I need to remain conscious of. Also, fun facts. Some of the time, low bar, right? Low bar. I don't want to do this today. Great, log out. I want to do this today. Great, log in. I was kidding. Great, log out. It's not about the result of that conversation. It's about recognizing the patterns of when you are in it and when you're interested and when you're like, no. And when you're like, nah, I don't need to fight this battle. Nobody is entitled to a conversation with you. I'm going to say that again. Nobody is entitled to a conversation with you. And you are not entitled to a conversation with someone else. This is why, specifically in this space, you are dealing with some of the most important moments of people's lives. When I first heard about this organization, the one thing I was told is don't make a joke about dying to be here. Here's what's important. You are dealing with the very last chances this go-round for people to do what their lived purpose is. That is huge. And you need to know that they are going to do that some of the time too. And you're going to be there for some of that. Some of it's going to happen with your nudging. Sometimes you're actually going to be right there in the moment. Sometimes it'll never happen. And that is the beauty of some of the time. This go around, the best advice I can give you is to be good enough now. Do the best you can with what you got some of the time. The part that didn't fit on the book cover is because it's a hell of a lot better than nothing. Right? You know when you're nothing. You know when you have 0 animals in this game. I say that because I can't remember if it's dogs or ponies. You know when you're like, I'm sitting this one out. Do you trust that somebody else is in it? Do you feel like you have to do everything because you can't trust somebody else to do it? I invite you, while you're here, refuel, reconnect, learn, play, laugh, and reconnect to that sense of trust. There are so many people who are doing exactly what they need to be doing, exactly at the right time, so you can do the best you can with what you got some of the time. I promise. That's good enough now. What I'd like to do now, is I would like to invite Nikki up to the stage. We're going to open this up to a Q&A that involves social media. Yikers. If you do the Twittering things, it's being moderated, and questions are going to be coming in, I believe, from the moderators. If you do not do the Twitter things, first off, high five. I'm so scared of the Twitter, but I'm trying really hard. I can also give you a texting number if you are interested in texting me directly. And the texting number is 202-670-4262. 202-670-4262. That also goes to all the people watching on Facebook Live who couldn't be here. This is such a family reunion that they're even included. What do you need me for, right? Thank you very much. Do the best you can with what you got. Questions? Ding. I'm going to sit down.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Jessica. So now we will be taking your questions. My name is Nikki Kessel. I'm the co-chair of the Annual Assembly Planning Committee for HPNA. I will be moderating today's Q&A with our Twitter correspondents, Earl Quijada, Ashley Derringer, and Lori Reuter. Throughout this session this morning, our correspondents have been watching the discussion on Twitter and have selected some questions for our speaker. Jessica, let's get started with
Can't
questions.
even wait.
All right. Our first question comes from Joshua Briscoe, and he asks, what happens when my good or enough conflicts with someone else's good or enough? And also on a similar theme, Judy Thomas asks, are we capable of finding good in others?
Can I start with number 2 first? God, I hope so. Right? Like, are we capable of finding good in others? Like, I don't have children. You're welcome. And I just had the utter delight of flying on an airplane with multiple children who seemed to not be excited about Boston at all. A screaming kid does not have an iPad, the ability to pick movies, toys, books, the ability to use a neck pillow because they're still working on using a neck, right? And a good 30 seconds of peekaboo can really make their day. We forget that as adults. We also forget that we come with all those toys on planes. Please be nice to kids and their terribly humiliated parents. I think if you can't find good in something, that's real work you need to do. And I would also give you enough grace and compassion that there's a reason why that is. And the reason that is your life has taught you that good doesn't exist. And that is, that's a very sad place for me to imagine that there are folks that are there. And I think about other people in other predicaments that I would consider significantly worse than when I got sad because I forgot to pack my favorite bra on this trip. Sadness could mean, I know, I'm managing. Sadness can mean other things. So when I project what I think is true sadness on someone else, and they are completely full of life and joy, that's work I need to do. So that would be number 2. The first one is when your good doesn't match somebody else's good. Am I paraphrasing that right? It's like I do this for a living. Don't worry about it. That's a very easy thing for me to say to you, and then you're welcome to remind me of that later. But you can't control other people. If you, I'm assuming, have figured that out on some level. When I find myself, when I'm out there, it always comes with that face, right? I try to flip it around. And when am I making someone else feel this way? When I interact with someone where my good doesn't match their good, can I make it easier for them so that they don't have the experience of me? Does that make sense? Like I'm responsible for their reaction when their good doesn't meet mine, instead of trying to change them. I can't make anybody do anything, including myself most of the time. I guess that would be my answer. Hopefully long answers are acceptable.
Our next question, by popular demand, Lori Flint and several other people want to know, how do you fold a fitted sheet? I think we'll have to take this to a breakout session.
Yeah. So fun facts, hotels don't use fitted sheets anymore because it's more efficient to just use really big flat sheets. Investigate, you're welcome. If you sign up for my newsletter, plug, you will get a video of me folding a fitted sheet. No, I shouldn't have brought one. I want them to sign up for my newsletter.
Sorry, you're right.
I'm selling books, Nikki. Okay.
We expect someone to prepare
It's
a
like
Twitter-
such a popular request. I really did make a video. It is set up to Star Wars. I mean, that's also really important, of folding a fitted sheet. And it's on YouTube. If you don't want to subscribe to my newsletter, I get it. It's on YouTube. It's called Jessica Pettit Folds a Fitted Sheet. It's clever.
We do expect someone to do a Twitter tutorial. Our real question, we're going to merge to from Allison Jordan, Dr. Jordan. How do we work from a place of privilege to do our good enough? And Paul Tatum, Doc Tatum says, on one hand, we need to focus on being good enough and loving ourselves to avoid burnout. How do us HPM folk not end up as the croutons from systems and lead the change?
Thanks for the softball questions, Twitter panel.
2 minutes.
I can have an answer, and I don't know if you have one as an actual professional in the field and not a comedian they flew in. I think the first answer I would say, and which is kind of ironic because I'm sitting in front of like professional, compassionate people, but you are a crouton. I promise, already. Somewhere, to someone, to some topic, to some particular type of situation, when that crosses and you immediately like pucker and go, God, no, that you are a crouton. Welcome. So what can you do to help notice when people are croutony and step up? Not because they're failing, but because they need some space. Like, I would say that it's a team thing. And I think I'm willing to bet at least one person, there's a lot of people in this room, at least one person was like, I'm not a crouton. Just that reaction is confirmation right there, right? Your job is hard. And maybe you need to fly someone in from outside to like remind you that like there's a reason why you're doing your job and somebody else isn't. So allow it to be hard. Allow it to be a personal Allow it to come in. You know, like I got a text message that says this sure speaks to emergency medicine, clinical care, teaching there, and trying to meet palliative needs there. Like I had to read it 9 times to even understand what that is. And y'all are like, yep, that's a Wednesday. Like if you're doing something I can't even understand, like it is okay. It is good enough. And now you need to figure out what to do with this. What would you add since you actually have a professional background here?
I would just say I think a lot of us became croutons and that led us into palliative care. So we maybe got a little fried and burnt in another world of medicine or in practice, and we said, we want to make a change. So we want to cook again in a different way.
So you went, what I'm hearing is you went from like the salad to like the French onion soup.
Yes. I like the soup.
Okay, good.
Soup's better.
Good job.
And because of our time, do you have a few closing remarks to end our morning?
First off, I will answer all the questions that come in. I'm here until like for many days. I will be wearing small, subtle clothing. Feel free to stop by while you're buying a book. I will answer questions. I really think that this has been a really incredible year for someone who really, I mean, it all started, we were joking about this, it started at a 7 a.m. session on the last day of a conference because Steve wanted to see a session about something real. And this is an association too. Choose sessions wisely. Notice when you're choosing sessions because it's comfortable. Don't waste your money. Like, go to a session that you're like, yikes, go there. What is it gonna hurt? No one is gonna know you don't know about it. And there are people who've been planning these really great sessions and you can learn and ask questions right then and no one back home will know. Like, take advantage of the educational opportunities here and notice when you automatically go to where you're most comfortable and when you avoid something. And then lean into what you're avoiding some of the time. That would be it, I guess.
Thank you again, Jessica. I think we owe her a large round of applause. I know that, Jessica, I know that you have helped me, along with everyone in the room, truly feel more comfortable in going home and approaching difficult conversations with much more ease. I don't think we get much permission to just be. So I'm very excited to take that home for myself. If you'd like to dive deeper into improving your conversation skills, Jessica will be holding another session this afternoon at 1:30, so make sure that you check your bulletin or your app. She will also have office hours later today and tomorrow, so again, check your app for those details.